If you're just joining, we are waiting a few minutes to let a few more colleagues jump in. And in the meantime, please introduce yourself with your name and the region you represent in the chat. And we will begin in about 30 seconds. Okay, I think we are ready to get started. Again, welcome to Office Hours for ESG. My name is Anthony Zepeda, and I'm today's moderator. If you're just joining us, please go to the chat and introduce yourself with the name and the region you represent. As a reminder to all, the Office Hours session is being recorded for the public record. Next slide, please. Here's some ground rules for today, how to ask a question. All questions must be submitted in the Q&A box. It's a little button down in your ribbon on your Zoom screen. You can type your organization and question into the question box, and the team will read your questions out loud at the end of the presentation. And throughout the presentation, we'll also be providing answers in the Q&A box. Along with presenters today, we have several HCD specialists, HCD management, and HCD representatives online who can help answer questions during the Q&A session. And just a reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A box. Don't put them in the chat, as they quickly get lost in the chat and they might get overlooked. And one note that we need to bring up, and I can see it's an issue in this office hours, it is against HCD policy to allow AI note takers during our HCD meetings. So we ask that you please disable your AI note takers during this office hour session, which is being recorded and will be sent out with the slides and the recording link in approximately 2 weeks. Once again, please disable your AI. Otherwise, we have to disable it by kicking you out of the meeting, and we can't let you back in the meeting because the way Zoom is structured. If we have to remove your login from the meeting because of the AI note taker, you won't be able to log back in. You'll have to wait 2 weeks plus for the office recording. Next slide, please. And on that note, please note that both the slides and the recording will be sent to all participants within approximately 2 weeks of today's session. Next slide, please. And now for some quick ESG updates. As you all are aware, the application portal is now open, and applications are due in East Civis by 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time in just about 10 days. So we're getting right down to the wire. Well, no, not that quite. I'm a week ahead. Let's see. Sorry, I probably gave half of you heart attacks. We've got about 2 more weeks there. Due on March 28th, and we anticipate the awards will be in July of this year. And one other note on this slide, one update, I don't have it written here, it might be in a slide up ahead, but the 2024 ESG NOFA has been amended to address the extension for the application date for those areas impacted by the LA wildfires. It will only impact their application date. It's been extended for those regions affected by the LA fires. Next slide, please. And going back to 2023 grant updates, just some performance milestone reminders from your standard agreements. The expenditure deadline for 2023 contracts is August 17th, just a few short months away. And grantees are required to submit at least one request for funds, or RFF, per quarter. And we highly recommend that you do it monthly. And tying in directly those expenditure deadlines and submitting on a monthly basis. We recommend you do this and not submit a bunch of RFFs all at once, because they have to be reviewed and approved in sequential order. So if you send in 5 RFFs all at once, 4 of them are just going to wait until that first one has been approved and reviewed and monitored, and it'll just expedite the process if you do one at a time every month, and we'll work with you on that as well. And one item I'd like to call out is the 2025 ESG RFF form. This was sent out to grantees a couple of months ago as part of their welcome package. Next slide, please. And for those of you who've been doing this for a while, you realize right away that this form is different. We've updated it for 2025, and we'll be using this form moving forward. And starting at the top area in the gray, draw request, contract number, reporting period, all of this information has to be filled in. It has to be accurate and current. In addition, your HCD representative, you might have an old rep listed on there that you just use that it's not your current rep. It has to be the current rep. All of this information is checked by the reviewers, and it's a double review, both from your direct representative and then from management and specialist review. So if these forms aren't filled out correctly and your rep doesn't catch it, management's going to send it right back. So please pay attention to the detail here. It's a new process, but it is very accurate, and it comes in handy as we're tracking your budget throughout this process. Down below in the budget breakdown, you can see we've got extra lines there for indirect costs. You can list your indirect cost budgets if you have them, and you will also list those when you are requesting funds in indirect costs. Next slide, please. All righty, first RF requirements. Some of you, about half of you have sent your first RFF in, and you have realized there's much different requirements now. For your first RFF, full backup documentation is required for all line items identified on your detailed expense report. That can mean client files, invoices, payroll stubs. And a client file, we have a checklist that we can help and send it out for you if you need it. A client file could include the homelessness certification, your check-in process, the case manager notes, leases, if it's rapid rehousing, rental agreements, and so on. So make sure to include all that. Work with your rep if you're unsure. We can have a meeting with you in Teams and walk you through the process. Second bullet, you must have your approved policies and procedures in place. Work with your rep if you're unsure. Otherwise, you had received a notice and a letter approving your policies and procedures. And we also ask that you redact all personally identifying information, or PII, before submitting. Next slide, please. So on the previous slide, we went over the requirements for the first RFF. In this slide, we go over the requirements for submitting your second and subsequent RFFs. For RFF number 2 and beyond, grantees are required to submit supporting documentation for 2 line items per component. The grantee is the one who chooses which 2 line items to submit supporting documentation. And if it's for rapid rehousing or homelessness prevention, then you must include a full client file. And of course, please ensure that you've redacted all PII from your files that you are submitting in eCivis. One caveat on this, while the grantee is the one who chooses the 2 line items in which they're going to submit the supporting documentation, HCD does reserve the right to request additional supporting documentation for those line items or on other line items as applicable. Next slide, please. Some more general updates here. We have posted the 2024 contract templates, the exhibits for your standard agreements. They're now posted on the ESG webpage. For many of our COC and county entities, this can be very helpful as you can download these templates and shoot them to your council or your finance department and make sure that we are on the same page. If there's anything that stands out that could be a problem in terms of slowing down your standard agreement process. Our intent this year is to really streamline the standard agreement process, make it go by quicker so you have more time to spend the money and get it deployed in your community. So this is one of the ways we are doing it, by posting those contract templates on our ESG webpage. Another note is to include your approved policies and procedure letters with your 2024 NOFA application. And this next four, they're kind of related, but I'm jumping from topic to topic, so I'll slow down a little bit. The next bullet is, please check your eCivis accounts and ensure that you have the correct contact information listed. As so often happens in our, especially with our nonprofits and our grantees, is we'll have a change of leadership, or we'll have a change in the finance department or the program director, and we will have incorrect contact information. We're sending it out, it's getting bounced back. And it could be very important information regarding your contract or your account, and we need to get in touch with you. So please work with your rep to make sure we have your correct contact information for your agency. The next bullet is, if you have submitted an RFF in eCivis, please check your eCivis emails on a regular basis. to see if we have returned the RFF for, if we're requesting additional documentation, or if we need to make some changes to the budget. Your DIR doesn't match your RFF is very common. Please check your email, your eCivis email on a regular basis, as we have a pretty quick turnaround time now, and we will shoot those back to you, letting you know if changes are needed. Next slide, please. And as always, if you have a question on your RFFs or other ESG related items, please reach out to your ESG representative or the ESG NOFA inbox. You can reach Sam, Giovanni, or myself at our email listed there, or you can reach out to the ESG NOFA inbox, which is monitored Monday through Friday during normal business hours. Next slide, please. Okay, all the updates are out of the way. We're moving to the Spotlight series. We're going to continue the same thing that we did last session. And in 2 weeks, we're going to do the same thing. We want to focus on TA, technical assistance for the 2024 ESG NOFA application. In this format, we will address the most standard questions that we get, the most common questions that we get from grantees on a regular basis, almost a daily basis. And we'll also open up the floor for your questions. Either you can come off mute and ask your questions, or you can submit it in the Q&A box. It really is an opportunity for you to cover something you're confused on the application, or you're just having some technical difficulties in eCivis, or you're not sure of what the requirements are. That's what we're here for. That's what these sessions are for. We're devoting 3 straight sessions to them in order to make sure we can cover as much as we can so you can get your information submitted correctly in your application. So with that, the format is we start out with a set of questions on the screen. These are the most common questions. Last session, we had 15 slides of questions. We don't have as many this time, but we do have the most common, the ones that are still coming in even after the office hour session last time. They're very common and we want to address them. We will then open up the floor for your questions in the open forum format. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So first question. First couple slides have to do with the resolutions, as always. I've mentioned it a million times. It's usually the biggest challenge we have, that and the budget, when we're doing these NOFAs in the application. So I'm going to go ahead and start from this slide. I'll read the question and then the answer. Can you confirm that the authorizing resolution must follow the template provided by HCD in order to be accepted as part of the ESG application? Yes. Applicants must submit their authorizing resolution on the HCD provided templates. Those are located on the HCD webpage under the NOFA tab, and there's a 1-year resolution or a 3-year, depending on what you would like to do. You must submit it on a board approved, your governing board approved resolution on that template using that format. So let's go to the next question that's directly related to that. Our local governing body requires an authorizing resolution different than the required HCD template. This is pretty standard stuff. The standard advice that we give, we recommend that if your governing board requires a template that differs from the required HCD ESG authorizing resolution, then your agency may submit 2 resolutions. The first resolution is the required HCD ESG authorizing resolution on that format, on the template. In addition, you can submit an authorizing resolution that conforms to your local standards of your governing board or your general counsel to request. So we could cover it by submitting 2. And it's very easy for us to do it that way. And it's not a problem. Next slide, please. Continuing on the resolutions theme, we're going to submit a 3-year authorizing resolution. Do we enter the 3-year total from the Appendix A in the NOFA, or do we enter the 1-year total? Pretty straightforward. For the 3-year authorizing resolution, you will list the 3-year amount in the authorizing resolution. For the 1-year authorizing resolution, you will list the 1-year amount. And this is for the authorizing resolution. We're not talking about the budget in eCivis. That's a different issue altogether. We're talking about the authorizing resolution. 3 years is 3. 3 is 3. 1 is 1. Pretty straightforward. And why do we, this is a good question that we get a lot from folks who aren't directly affiliated with ESG and they just see this for the first time. Why do we enter 150% in section XX and 25% in section XXX of the authorizing resolution? There's 2 sections. One is when you enter the 150%, We recommend doing this because additional dollars in this 2024 NOFA ESG allocation often become available. This, by entering this amount, this gives your agency flexibility and HCD the leeway to then award money, additional monies to your agency for your current contract without having to go through a lot of another resolution, all kinds of, paperwork. We don't want to do that. This makes it much easier. And then the following section where you enter 25% more, that is in a section where what if new monies become available? I mean, it's not likely, but it has happened before where new ESG dollars become available from the federal government. And if you have that flexibility built into your existing resolution, we can then get that money to your agency without having to go through a whole another process of standard agreements and resolutions and all that fun stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. We can always touch on it again next time. Next slide, please. Okay, here's one. We admit it. We messed up here on the COC, the original COC recommendation letter. We had a typo in the authorizing representative language. So that form has now been updated. It is located in eCivis, is in the updated form. So make sure to check yours to see if you have the most current COC recommendation letter. The question related to that is who signs the COC recommendation letter? The authorized representative for the COC. In the previous instructions for the COC recommendation letter, the typo is there that said the person who is authorized in your authorizing resolutions. No, that's not the case at all. The person from the COC who signs the COC recommendation letter is the authorized representative to do so for that particular COC. If you have questions on that, please, in the open session, come off mic and ask, and we'll cover it. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're moving on to the budget and goals section within eCivis for the 2024 NOFA. Should we enter the 1-year or 3-year budget in eCivis at the time of application? Forget about what I said about the resolutions. They're two separate items. This is for the budget in eCivis. You should enter the 1-year total. The budget will be updated in subsequent years via an amendment. And this, once again, this is an example of that streamlining process. We're moving to reduce the paperwork or extend your spending period for your funds. We can just update it by amendment each year rather than go through the whole process again of the standard agreement, the resolutions, and so on. Next question is, for the indirect cost budget worksheet, should we enter the 1-year or 3-year amount in eCivis? Once again, the answer is the 1-year amount. Enter the 1-year amount in eCivis. Just remember that as you're going through it, the budget, the goals, the indirect cost budget worksheet, 1-year amount. We cannot enter our budget or project goals in eCivis. Let's see here. I think I have a little note on this one, but I might have to have Tim jump in. If you're having trouble here, let's see. Tim, can you address this real quick? I don't think I have the notes up for it.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. So I believe, as Anthony stated, we did cover this in a previous office hours. So but if you happen to not be in attendance for that one, we'll mention it here again. So when you are logged into your eCivis application portal, you will need to scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen, and you may have to just make sure that you see it all the way at the bottom. So there is a section. So as many of us are probably familiar with, there's this different sections of the application, titles such as match exemption, indirect cost worksheet, general certifications, that sort of thing. So most of us have probably seen the budget one. Please ignore that one. You do not have to fill that one, but just keep scrolling all the way to the bottom of your portal, and you will see the application budget and goals section. And then if you scroll all the way to the right, there's 3 little lines on the far right of the screen. If you click on those 3 lines, you'll be able to edit your budget there and also your goals. And so you won't have to open a new window. You just have to follow those prompts in the portal, click on those 3 lines, and you should be able to edit there. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate that. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're moving to the indirect cost workbook. Something new and something we need to cover. It's going to be confusing to you, but it's actually pretty simple and straightforward. So what is the indirect cost workbook? If you're claiming indirect costs, the indirect cost workbook identifies the indirect costs in your budget. So the workbook is a way for you to identify the indirect cost in your budget. One note is the workbook doesn't auto-populate, so applicants will need to ensure that their totals are correct. I'll have an example on the next slide. And what is our indirect cost rate? The majority of applicants will claim the de minimis indirect cost rate of 15%. If you're unsure of what indirect cost rate your agency uses, for instance, you might be a county entity or a very large entity where you have all kinds of different ways of doing this, reach out to your finance team or your accounting team and find out which indirect cost rate they want to use or they will use for the ESG grant. It can be the de minimis, which is by far the most common, indirect cost rate of 15%. It can be a NICRA, a negotiated indirect cost rate that you would do with a federally cognizant agency, or the cost allocation plan, also done with a federally cognizant agency. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of the indirect costs workbook. As you can see, the grantee name, example, indirect cost method, there's a drop-down menu there of which you would use. For this particular example, it's the de minimis. The indirect cost rate for the de minimis set by federal regulations is currently 15%. So if you go down to the next row, ESG amount requested, and you can see the budgets and the components. And for street outreach, we have a direct amount of $1,000, an indirect amount, 15% times 1,000 is 150 for a total amount of 1,150. We then go down to rapid rehousing, a $5,000 amount, 15% of that is 750. Added together is 5,750. The totals are down at the bottom. And then the budget cap compliance are listed there for your information. And Tuesday, I need to add anything? Did I miss anything?
I just want to remind people that there's 2 tabs on the workbook, and not all costs are automatically allowable for indirect costs. So you need to actually fill out your expected amounts for different types of spending on the second tab, and that will help you determine what your actual costs will be. And then you can fill that in on the front page. I think actually from the back page, it auto fills into the front page or tab. But you do need to do both tabs and fill those out. And we understand that you're going to be kind of estimating how much your cost and engagement and case management and things like that are in this situation. So fill out at your best guess. And when you're actually doing your RFFs going forward, you'll take your de minimis or your indirect costs off of what your actual spending was. So that's kind of a moving target, but you're not applying the 15% across the board anymore.
Thank you, Tuesday. For those of you who don't know, Tuesday is an ESG specialist, and one of the areas that she's very strong in, reluctantly, but very strong in, is the indirect cost section of the application. Thank you, Tuesday. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're switching over to the TINs and the STD 204. So checking that the STD 204 is only required for a nonprofit. That's correct. Nonprofits will submit a STD 204. Government entities, county entities, will submit a TIN. Do these forms need to be signed by the authorized representative named on the resolution, or can another position sign? These forms, the TIN or the STD 204, they're signed by the person in your particular agency authorized to sign financial documents. It varies from agency to agency. It could be the authorized representative, especially if you're a small nonprofit where the exec director is the finance director and the program manager as well. They do everything. However, if you're a county entity, it's probably going to be a finance person versus your program manager or your county executive officer. Next question. We cannot locate the sections in eCivis to upload the STD204. Tim just touched on that. You can locate the upload slots. I think there's like 6 of them at the bottom of the application, right below budget and goals. So just scroll down to the bottom and you'll see where you can upload your 204 or other documents that you need to upload that there may not be a particular upload button. That's what those slots are for down at the bottom.
And Anthony, if I could just interject really quick on that. I know this has been a question from a lot of people, so we just want to clarify this as well. So there is a section of the application, as many of us have probably seen, that is titled Applications. It should be at the top. And so you're going to have to open that section particularly, and this is probably one of the longer sections of the application. It is located at the top. And so you will have to open that section as if you were completing all of the required questions. And then at the bottom of that section is where you're going to see options to upload. So you will have to kind of navigate through the portal to be able to find that. But there's, like Anthony stated, there are about 6 different upload options. You can upload your signed COC recommendation form there. You can do your government TIN, STD204, whichever doesn't have its own upload option. And so that's where you will need to navigate to make those uploads. So just so there's no additional questions on that. And an STD 204 is a required form, just as another reminder. So if you are a nonprofit applying this year for ESG, that is a required form to fill out. So please make sure that that is completed and signed, as well as government TINs. If you are a local government, a government TIN is also required. So please do not miss those forms when completing the application. Okay, thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Tim. And for those of you who may not know Tim, Tim is the program manager of the ESG team. He's a great guy to work with, so reach out to him when you can. Next slide, please. Where can we find all the requirements for the 2024 ESG NOFA application? Well, as you know, if you've been in ESG for a while, there's a lot of requirements, federal, state, and NOFA, and the actual NOFA. So pages 15 and 16 of the 2024 ESG NOFA identifies the threshold requirements for your application. The threshold requirements are those things that must be completed in order for your application even to be accepted. So if you don't have those items, your application just gets pushed aside. It has to meet the threshold requirements identified on pages 15 and 16 of the NOFA. Pages 16 and 17 lists the state and federal requirements for the ESG program. We highly recommend that you make yourself very familiar with these, at least a working knowledge of the state and federal requirements for the ESG program, as it will have an impact on when you're submitting your RFFs and your requests for reimbursements. The last portion of the ESG application, the one in eCivis, lists all of the threshold requirements contained in the eCivis application. So that's just one more checkpoint for you to look and see, have we got everything? Yes, make sure to check the threshold requirements within the eCivis application. Next slide, please. And related to that, the 2024 application is different than previous years. Where can I find section blank, blank, blank? Yes, the 2024 application, as mentioned before, was streamlined to improve the overall application process, to simplify it for our grantees, to simplify the review for ESG staff, and to streamline the paperwork and approval process to get you your money quicker and more, and you can be much more efficient within your communities. There are some changes in each component requirements. Some have been added and others deleted. Please review the NOFA under the components for each component that you're applying for to make sure that you are up to date on any requirements that may have been updated. There are new minimums for participant triage, written standards, coverage areas, and housing problem solving. And there are also new requirements in street outreach and emergency shelter that are related to diversion and rapid exit. And let me double check my notes here, see if there's anything else on that slide. No, we are good. So next slide. I think we're almost done. Okay, just wanted to touch on it. We usually save this one for the end of the presentation, but I wanted to move it forward to make it top of mind before we get into the open forum. The ESG webpage, we want to remind you, it is a great source of information. Everything that we go over in office hours is on the ESG webpage. It does require a little bit of becoming familiar with the webpage, but we would highly recommend that you do so. There are templates there. There are policies and procedures there. There is guidance for different programs and components. There are archives of the office hours. You can watch previous office hour sessions. There's links to our YouTube page where you can watch the office hours sessions as well. And there are also previous year NOFAs on there. If you want to know how much was our region awarded back in 23 or 22, you can look in those as well. So I just want to call that out. The ESG web, it's a great source of information. When in doubt, you can't get in touch with us, you're working on the application, check the website. The information will probably be there. In addition, the NOFA is located there. There's also a link on the slide. And also our ESG NOFA inbox contact information is there. So you can reach out to the NOFA inbox if you're having trouble getting in touch with your rep, or if it's a general question that you want to send to the whole team. Next slide, please. All right, so now is the portion of office hours. I got approximately 25 minutes or so where we're going to open the floor. We're going to address the questions that we have received in the Q&A box, and then we're going to open the floor for your questions if you'd like to come off mic. You can do so by just raising your hand. You can go in the reactions thread of your, where's that at? Where's that raise hand? You can raise a hand in the reaction section and we will call on you and you can come off mic and ask your question, off mute and ask your question. And with that, I will turn it over to Amanda for the Q&A box first.
Okay. I'm actually going to turn it over to Tuesday to answer Jennifer's question about the indirect cost worksheet first.
Okay.
Yes, Jennifer Miller asked if they're not including indirect costs, do they need to include the indirect cost worksheet? You do not. You just need to fill out the certificate that's included in the application and say no, you're not taking indirect costs, and upload that. Have it sign and upload that into your application, and make sure that your budget, when you do your budget in eCivis, matches that you're not taking the indirect costs. Good question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tuesday. Okay, we'll start at the top. For the racial equity analysis, the HUD form says the years 2022 to 2023 data. Do you really want those years, or is that a mistake? And should we include 2023 to 2024 data? That is not a mistake. Please include 2022 to 2023 data. We know that's a year behind, but we want to make sure that you all have the data, and so that was to just ensure that you actually have it and you're not digging for newer data that may not be available. Next question, if the most recent HUD audit is from 2021, is that sufficient? I believe
Yes.
so.
Yes, if it's their
Yes.
most
There you go.
recent completed audit, then that will be fine.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony.
Sure.
If our county is the designated administrative entity for our COC, do we still need to submit a COC recommendation form? That is a good question, Ben. This actually came up from another entity that is a county, and we discussed it. And going forward, if the county is the designated administrative entity, then the COC should fill out the recommendation form. If they do not feel comfortable filling out the recommendation form and signing it, then the COC needs to write a letter on COC letterhead explaining the situation. And then the county will fill out the COC recommendation form with its subrecipients. So again, if the COC does not want to fill out the recommendation form, if they do not feel comfortable doing so, then they need to write a letter on COC letterhead, and you will submit the letter, and then the county will fill out the recommendation form with its subrecipients. And you can always email the ESG NOFA inbox with questions, or Ben, you can always email myself, Amanda, or Tim also, of course. Next question. Can you repeat the 150% section and the 25% section again? I will let you take that, Anthony.
I sure will. And Gio, I'm going to try and share my screen, and I'm going to see if it works. I'm going to hit allow and try and find the screen here. All right. Can everyone see the 1-year resolution template governing body screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here we go, the 150 and 25%. So you're on the resolution template. They're both the same in terms of this section, and we're going to scroll down. And here we are in section 1. Instruction. It is recommended that you list an approved dollar amount that is at least 150% of the amount you expect to receive based on the Appendix A and the NOFA. This is what I mentioned, in the event that additional funding dollars from this NOFA become available. We recommend 150% of the amount you expect to receive to give you the flexibility to easily add dollars should they become available and you are authorized to accept them. So memorize it here, or otherwise just go to the NOFA application, get the resolution, and the instructions are right here, 150%. And now if you go down to section 2, it is recommended here that you list an approved dollar amount that is at least 25% above the amount you expect to receive. This is in the event that additional funding dollars become available from HUD for the ESG program that are outside of the ESG current NOFA. 150 is within the NOFA and 25 without the NOFA. I realize that it's a nitpicking and it probably doesn't mean much to grantees, but it is an administrative step that we can cover our bases, and it allows your agency to receive more funding dollars as they become available. That's the only reason it's like this. It's not meant to trick you or confuse you or promise you anything. It's just, hey, let's build in a not to exceed amount that gives you more flexibility in order to accept the dollars. And now I'll stop sharing. And hopefully it goes back to Gio, and we'll go back to the questions.
And I'm just going to add to that because Denise had a good question. Her organization put more than the allocated dollar amount in the NOFA for the 3-year budget, and that is perfectly acceptable. You just do not want to put less. If you put less, you will have to redo the resolution. But as long as it is more than the 150%, that is perfectly acceptable.
Thank you, Amanda.
Next question, which I might need your help with, Anthony. In the application information section, not the budget section, which column from Appendix A should we enter in that field? There are 5 columns in Appendix A.
Take a look here. I'll get to the Appendix A real quick. And Ben, which COC are you from again? What number? Does everyone remember? Ben Kong, Sam, Gio. Where's Ben Kong from?
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara, and that would be which COC? I'm trying to find a COC in the appendix.
The number?
Yeah.
Number it's 500, I believe.
500, okay.
Yeah, 500.
All right, hold on, everyone. I'm trying to find that one.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm gonna try that whole screen share again, if I can pull that off. You guys get to see my technical difficulties in action. Let's see. Okay, the question is, let me go back and look at it. The question was which number to enter for the first year. And we are trying to find 500. Ah, there we go. Go ahead and we would enter in the 593.44. So that would be cycle 1 estimate for annual funding.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony.
Mhm.
This will be a question for you, Tuesday. Please speak more about the approval of the policies and procedures. We received 2023 ESG for emergency shelter, but we aren't sure if our policies and procedures are approved. And we have rapid rehousing policies and procedures and draft for 2024.
Oh, that's an excellent question. So we are requiring written and approved policies and procedures for all 4 of the components. But what we did was we implemented homelessness prevention first and then rapid rehousing second. And for this, so for 2023, you had to have approved policies and procedures for rapid rehousing. And then for 2024, we're going to include having you're going to have to have rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention, street outreach, and emergency shelter if you are asking for funding in any of those. So we have not approved emergency shelter and we have not approved street outreach at this point. We will be reviewing those as part of the application process, review process coming forward for the 2024 um, uh, funding cycle. So include your policies and procedures in your application. We'll be reviewing them. We'll reach out to you if we have questions. If you're applying for rapid rehousing this coming funding cycle, we'll want those policies and procedures and we'll have to review those and get them approved also before you can spend, before you can put in a request for funding. So we have some time to work back and forth with each other.
Thank you, Tuesday.
Mhm.
If we are not qualified for the match exemption, that is the section required in the application. It says action required. Is that?
Yeah, you just, thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Scott. Scott, you just go in and mark it as complete. If you're not applying for or qualified for the match exemption, there should be a button you just mark as complete and move on.
Thank you, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
On the eCivis application, there does not seem to be an area to put things that used to be asked for, such as the need for funds narrative, HMIS data reports, etc. Am I missing something?
For this question, Veronica, it could be 2 things, just depending on the nature of this question. Where do I put things that used to be asked for? As mentioned in a previous slide in the updates, the 2024 application has been streamlined. It's different than previous years. So you're not entering a lot of the same data that you did last year or in previous years. All you need to enter is what's required in the threshold requirements for the 2024 ESG NOFA and eCivis. Hopefully it's a better, easier process for you. That's the first address. Go ahead, Amanda.
And just make sure that you have all the required forms from the solicitation also.
Yes. The other way of going about this question is perhaps that wasn't what you were asking. Perhaps you're asking, where do I upload these items that I need to upload? We touched on an earlier slide with Tim as well. At the bottom of the eCivis, I think he said the budget area, but at the bottom there are 6 slots that you can upload additional documentation that is required to be uploaded. Only that which is required to be uploaded. Please don't include anything that we no longer require. And hopefully that saves you some work.
Thank you, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the racial equity dates, those were given previously for fiscal year 23. Can we reuse that info? Again, if it's within the time period that is listed in the application and we already collected it and you already have it, then yes, you can reuse it. Just make sure that it is the dates that we are requesting.
And Amanda, I'm going to jump in once again,
Mhm.
Geo, and share my screen, as this question is come up today in this session, and it's also in 2 separate questions in our NOFA inbox today. So I want to share this slide from the last session. It's a general guidance slide for the COC analysis. The HUD COC analysis tool is no longer available on the HUD website. How can we complete this section without the data? Our recommendation is to use the following data sources to complete this section of the application to the best of your ability. We realize there are going to be missing parts. You might not be able to have all the information. We recommend that you do it to the best of your ability. The time period, as stated, is 10/1/22 to 9/30/2023. And we recommend using any available data from your local COC, even if it was a previous year, as long as it's a recent previous year. Stella P information as it is available. As I understand it, Stella P information is becoming less available as well. I believe that's related to recent presidential executive orders for HUD. And if that is the case, then once again, do the best you can with the information that you have. This is new for all of us. We're all in the same boat. The NOFA was created, the requirements in eCivis for the application were created, the ESG requirements that this section cites were created all before the presidential executive orders that have been taking place in January and February of this year, which has resulted in a lot of this racial equity data being removed from the HUD website. So we understand it. We're in the same boat. We ask that you do the best you can to complete this data. And if there's a question, reach out to us and we will give you some feedback on it.
And Anthony, I'm going to interject here real quick as well. So just so everybody on our call here knows today, HCD was actually very fortunate to obtain a copy of the COC analysis tool, the 4.0 version, which is the most current version that was previously on the HUD Exchange website. So we actually do have a copy of that available. So for those of you who are used to doing your racial equity analysis that way, we do have that that workbook available. So what you will need to do is that you will need to navigate to the eCivis solicitation where all of the where the files are, and so under that tab where you find the required forms for the application, you will now see you'll be able to see that 4.0 version analysis tool. So so what we just discussed, what Anthony just shared, you can do the HMIS way that is in the application, or you're welcome to do the other one. You are not required to do both. And so you can pick one or the other, and there's no preference on HCD's side. So whatever direction your agency wants to go and submit, that is completely fine. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you. And back to you, Amanda.
If a nonprofit administrative entity for the COC is applying for the COC's allocation and administering that allocation to local subgrantees, can the nonprofit administrative entity use indirect funds available in that allocation to support their own costs associated with administering the funds locally? The short answer would be yes, but there's technicalities to that. So we would need to talk to you, Andrea, probably on the side, more about your budget. So if you would like to set up a call with us, you are more than welcome to email your rep or the ESG NOFA inbox, and we would be happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you.
Next question. Are direct services such as rental assistance, utility costs eligible for indirect costs? No, I do not believe so. Those are direct costs. Unless I'm misunderstanding the question, Tuesday.
Are we talking about how when you're filling out the indirect cost workbook? Trying to remember if that was case management skills. Let me find my, because not every what the question I think is dealing with is that not every activity is available for indirect costs. Rental fees. Let's see. I'm gonna rental assistance. It is not. If I'm understanding the question correctly. So rental assistance and those things are not part of the cost of allocation for getting indirect costs. So when you type in your rental assistance in the workbook, it'll tell you that you do not qualify for indirect costs for that.
Okay, thank you, Tuesday. And then the next question, Andrea, about the COC recommendation form and letter that I addressed to Ben originally. Can you please email me or Tuesday or Tim or the ESG NOFA inbox or your rep, and I'd be happy to, we can type that out for you so that you can talk to your COC board about that. We'd be happy to do that for you. We just need you to reach out and we can respond. And then next question, is there a amended COC recommendation form posted, or was it just a clarification to the typo and the originally posted form? I believe it was reposted.
The new form has been posted in E-Civis.
Yes.
Tim took care of that. It's been about 2 weeks now that we've had that in there.
That is correct. Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. And it looks like this is the last question for now. Under the reminders section on the application tab in eCivis, it mentions budget goals, then slots for additional file uploads. What would be uploaded there? So one of the things would be your 204 or 10. So for DD, it would be the 10 form for you since you're with LA count or with LACTA. Can you think of anything else offhand, Anthony?
Yeah, I was going to say that question is actually looks like a plant. Like I paid her to put that there. That's the section we've talked about. We've talked about it a couple times. That's the section, the the 6 slots where you can upload things that there may not be an upload as you're going through the eCivis. I got to upload. I got to upload this. Where do I put it? It's like the 204, right there. Any other documentation that you want to that needs to be included with your application as well. And Tim, was there anything else that might be there that I didn't touch on?
Dee Dee's making jokes now. She said she'll send you herself.
Exactly. We're gonna put her on the payroll here. The join our HCD team slide coming up. I'm gonna. And if that looks like it's everything, right, Amanda?
Yeah, unless there's any hands raised or if anyone else wants to ask any questions in the chat.
Well,
or
we'll give
in
everyone a
the
couple
Q&A
of minutes.
box.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We'll give
No,
everyone a
you're
couple
fine.
minutes. And
It looks like Tim has his hand up.
okay,
Let me see if I can unmute him. Allowed to talk. Here we go, Tim.
Hi, good morning. Thanks everyone for all your help. It's really great. I was wondering on the application goals section, it looks like it's a little different than last year in that it's a lot of other categories like ages and demographics. If we aren't specifically targeting any of those demographics, do you have any recommendations for us?
No, if you're not targeting them, then your response would be 0 if you don't anticipate helping that age group or that demographic.
And we understand that as you're filling out your goals that they're aspirational, so they're just goals and we're not holding you to that. We're
Yeah.
looking at those as data for ourselves as we're kind of looking at what our goals are and what our grantees aspirations are anyway. So it's not, those are a moving target and we understand that you may or may not be serving any of those populations. Fill it in as best you can and we'll use it the way we need to.
And when you do your annual performance report, for annually every year, you'll fill in the actuals. So again, like Tuesday's saying, it's just a goal. So if your
Cool.
goal is 0, it's 0, and there's no issue with that.
Well, thanks so much.
thank you, Amanda. And we'll give it about 30 more seconds. We've got 4 minutes till end of the meeting. About 30 more seconds to see if anyone else thinks of anything. And want to thank you, Amanda, for going through the questions section. For those of you
Mhm.
who may not worked with Amanda, which is pretty rare, Amanda's been with HCD for decades, and she is a senior specialist in our department, and we rely on her a lot. So it's great to have her here to help with the questions.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right. It looks like we can go ahead and wrap this up. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And we ask that you follow us on our social media. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on X, or on LinkedIn. Next slide, please. And here is our closing slide that we always have up. We're always looking for folks to join our team here at HCD and support our mission here in California. You can find your jobs at the link listed there, and we'd love to hear from you. We'll go ahead and wrap up for today. We'll meet again in 2 weeks for one last session of the ESG TA Open Forum. We'll go over question Q&A. We'll go over specific questions that you may have regarding the eCivis application or the NOFA requirements. And that will be about 10 days before the application. No, even less than that. It'll be just a few days before the application. So getting down to the wire. We're excited, looking forward to helping you, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much, and take care.